the most nutritious plant on Earth, confirmed by the CDC. Why don't you know about it? There is a vegetable that kept Victorian London alive when everything else failed. It scores 100 out of 100 in the CDC's nutrition study, the only food ever to achieve a perfect score. The vegetable in your supermarket right now. It scores 7. The perfect score. In June 2014, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention finished a study that would change nothing. They found the healthiest food on Earth. Then the world ignored it. The project was massive. The researchers wanted to answer a question that had haunted nutritionists for decades. What is the single most nutrient-dense food on the planet? They were looking for hard data. They took 47 of the most common superfoods, fruits, and vegetables we are told to eat every day, and they measured exactly how much potassium, fiber, protein, calcium, iron, and vitamins A, C, E, and K each food delivered per 100 calories. The results were shocking. Kale, the darling of every health food store in America, scored 49 out of 100. Spinach, the legendary muscle builder, did much better, 86. Blueberries, praised as the ultimate antioxidant superfood, scored 11. But at the very top of the list, standing alone with a perfect score of 100 out of 100, sat a plant that most modern Americans have never tasted. It was not an exotic berry from the Amazon. It was not a root from the high Andes. It was a humble peppery green leaf that grows in cold, shallow streams across the northern hemisphere. Watercress. According to the most rigorous scientific analysis ever conducted by the United States government, watercress is the most nutrient-dense food on Earth. And yet, if you walk into a typical American supermarket today, you will not find it. Why? The answer is not a conspiracy. The answer is far more tragic. Poor man's bread. To understand what we lost, you have to go back to the foggy, coal-stained streets of Victorian London, where children sold survival by the penny. In the mid-1800s, London was the beating heart of the Industrial Revolution. But it was a brutal place to be poor. The working class lived on bread, sugary tea, and cheap grease. Malnutrition was rampant. Scurvy was a constant threat in the slums. The Victorians had a secret weapon. They called it poor man's bread. Every morning, long before the sun rose over the Thames, hundreds of street sellers would fan out across the city. They were often children, some as young as 5 or 6, barefoot in the cold, carrying wicker baskets stacked high with fresh green bunches of watercress. The cry of "fresh creases, fresh water creases" was the soundtrack of the London morning. It echoed off the brick walls of factories and tenements. For a single penny, a factory worker could buy a large bunch. And in that one bunch, they got more iron than a serving of spinach, more calcium than a glass of milk, and more vitamin C than an orange. It was a nutritional miracle. The pale children, the men coughing coal dust, the mothers stretching pennies until they screamed, they survived on watercress. It kept them standing, kept their blood strong, kept scurvy at bay. This was survival itself, but it would not last. The Victorians were about to do something no civilization had done before, the Watercress Railway. The Victorians valued it so highly, they built a railroad just to move it. In Hampshire, 50 miles from London, vast networks of gravel beds were dug into the chalk streams. These were not muddy swamps. They were sophisticated, crystal-clear aquatic farms. The water had to be constantly moving, bubbling up from deep underground aquifers rich in minerals, flowing through the beds to keep the plants crisp and sweet. This was precision agriculture before the term existed. The Victorians understood something we have forgotten. The best food requires care. It requires clean water. It requires speed. So they built infrastructure just to keep the city fed. The Midhants Railway, known locally as the Watercress Line, was constructed specifically to rush this perishable green from the streams to the city. A railway designed for a vegetable. The crop was cut at 4 o'clock in the morning, loaded onto the steam train by 6, and sold on the streets of London by 8. From the cold stream to the worker's sandwich in 4 hours. The original farm-to-table system, like a military supply chain. A society that built a railroad for watercress understood something fundamental. Food is not just fuel, it is medicine, it is survival. And if it takes a steam engine to deliver it fresh, you build the steam engine. But the world was about to change. And when it did, the plant that fed an empire would become a liability. The engineering problem. Then the world changed. Cities exploded outward, and the food system that fed humanity for thousands of years began to crack. As the 20th century dawned, populations surged. Cities grew like living organisms, sprawling away from the rivers and railways that had once kept them fed. The local systems, the watercress trains and dawn deliveries, could not keep pace. We needed a new way to feed millions of people who lived hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles from the nearest farm. Distance, time, perishability. These were the enemies. A factory worker in Manchester could no longer walk to the market and buy watercress cut 4 hours earlier. A grocer in Brooklyn could not stock vegetables harvested that morning. The old ways were breaking. Cities were too big. Populations were too spread out. We needed crops that could survive the journey. Vegetables that could sit in warehouses, ride in rail cars, wait on shelves. Food that acted less like a living organism and more like a manufactured product. We needed an engineering solution. The demand was clear. Feed millions. Do it cheaply. Do it reliably. Do it at scale. And the system would give us exactly what we asked for. It would optimize for distance, for durability, for profit. It would solve the engineering problem perfectly, but it would not optimize for nutrition. In 1894, the answer arrived. The birth of iceberg. In 1894, the Bury Seed Company gave us the answer. It was not nutrition, it was endurance. They released a new variety of lettuce derived from French Batavia. It was dense. It was pale. It formed a tight, hard ball of leaves that looked more like a cabbage than a lettuce. Then someone made a discovery. You could throw it in a crate, cover it with crushed ice, and ship it in a rail car from California to New York. And when it arrived a week later, it looked exactly the same as the day it was picked. Not similar, the same. Because it was shipped under mounds of crushed ice, they called it an iceberg. What happened next would change American food forever. Iceberg lettuce was a technological marvel. It was the first vegetable that acted like a manufactured product. It did not wilt, it did not bruise. It stacked perfectly in boxes. You could drop it, pile it, forget about it for days, and it would still look fresh under grocery store lights. It was uniform, it was predictable, it was durable. This was not food designed for the human body. This was food designed for the railroad, for the warehouse, for the long journey from field to city without spoiling, without complaint. Watercress needed cold streams and 4-hour deliveries. Icebergs needed nothing but ice and time. The system had found its champion, and the champion would conquer an entire nation. America's new king. In 1919, Americans ate 4.1 pounds of lettuce per person per year. By the mid-1950s, they ate 14 pounds. One variety conquered them all. Iceberg. It swept across America like a wave. Everyone loved it, because iceberg lettuce solved every problem the industrial food system had. It did not wilt, did not bruise, did not rot during 3-day journeys from California to Chicago. It was low risk, it was profitable, it was the perfect inventory. You could order a truckload on Monday, receive it on Friday, display it for a week, and it would still look crisp and green under the fluorescent lights. No waste, no loss. Watercress, meanwhile, had a shelf life measured in hours. Iceberg had a shelf life measured in weeks. For a supermarket trying to stock shelves across a sprawling nation, this was decisive. Icebergs became America's most consumed vegetable, not because it tasted better, not because it nourished better, because it survived better. The system had been optimized for the truck, not the human. Victorian children once sold watercress by the penny to survive. Now, America was building an empire on crunchy water. But this was only the beginning. The engineers were not done yet. They were about to make food immortal, the Holy Grail. Then came the real innovations. Engineers found a way to make food immortal. In the 1950s, Whirlpool developed vacuum cooling. The technology removed field heat from lettuce immediately after harvest, locking it into suspended freshness. Modified atmosphere packaging followed. Lettuce was sealed in bags filled with carefully controlled gas mixtures that slowed decay to a crawl. By the 1960s, iceberg lettuce had a shelf life of 28 days. Think about that. You could pick a head of lettuce in the Salinas Valley of California, load it onto a refrigerated train, store it in a centralized warehouse for a week, truck it to a supermarket in New York, display it under fluorescent lights for another week, and then let it sit in a customer's refrigerator for 2 more weeks before they ate it. 4 weeks from field to mouth, and it would still be crisp, still green, it still looks fresh. This was the holy grail of the emerging industrial food system. Food that did not spoil. Food that waited patiently in warehouses and trucks and stores and fridges, never complaining, never wilting. Supermarkets could stock their shelves once and forget about them. Distributors could consolidate shipments. Farmers could harvest on schedule without worrying about the clock. Efficiency, scale, profit. This was the metric that mattered. This was the variable the system optimized for. And watercress, wilting in streams and fading within hours of harvest, had no answer for it. Watercress was about to become a nightmare. The nightmare vegetable. Watercress was a nightmare. Watercress is 93% water. Its stems are hollow. It is an aquatic plant that relies on the constant pressure of cold, moving water to stay upright, to stay alive. The moment you cut it from the stream, it begins to perish. Within hours, the leaves start to wilt. The stems lose their crispness. The vibrant green fades to dull olive. Even with the best refrigeration, technology the 1960s could offer, watercress had a shelf life of perhaps 2 to 3 days, maybe 5 if you were lucky. In the new world of long-haul trucking and centralized distribution, watercress was not just difficult, it was a liability. It wilted in 18-wheelers. It turned to mush under fluorescent lights. It arrived at supermarkets looking tired, bruised, nearly lifeless. 28 days versus 3 days. That is a 10 times difference in shelf life. For a food distribution system built around centralized warehouses, around bulk shipments, around inventory that could sit and wait, this difference was decisive. Watercress failed every test the system demanded. Iceberg, meanwhile, thrived. It was stacked. It shipped. It waited. The system had a choice to make, and the system always chooses what survives the longest. In 2014, when the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention published their study, journalists would ask the remaining watercress farmers how they felt. One of them would just laugh, but that was 50 years away. First, the railway had to close. In 1963, the choice became final. The railway closes. In 1963, the watercress railway closed, and with it, a 4-hour miracle disappeared forever. The beaching cuts, a brutal wave of railway closures across Britain, shut down the Midhants line, the watercress line, the railway built specifically to rush fresh greens from Hampshire streams to London markets, went silent. No more steam engines at dawn, no more crates loaded at 6 in the morning, no more deliveries by 8. Road transport took over. Refrigerated trucks helped, but the journey was longer. The watercress arrived wilted, tired, less vibrant. Grocers complained, customers noticed. Meanwhile, iceberg lettuce thrived. It shipped from California to New York without complaint. It rode in trucks for 3 days and arrived looking exactly as it had when picked. It stacked perfectly in warehouses. It waited patiently on shelves. The system made a choice. It was not chosen based on flavor. The peppery bite of watercress versus the bland crunch of iceberg was not the question. It was not chosen based on health. The fact that one plant scored 100 out of 100 and the other scored 7 did not matter. It was chosen based on logistics. Could it survive the truck, wait in the warehouse, sit on the shelf without wilting? The watercress said no. Iceberg said yes. And so, the most nutrient-dense food on Earth lost to the most durable. We chose the truck over the body. And within 20 years, the collapse would be total. The trade. We replaced the vegetable that scored 100 out of 100 with a vegetable that scored 7, not 70. 7. That is the actual score of iceberg lettuce received in the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention study. 7 out of 100. Iceberg lettuce is 96% water. The pale inner leaves, the part most of us actually eat, have been shielded from the sun their entire lives. No sunlight means no chlorophyll. No chlorophyll means almost no vitamins. No antioxidants, no complex compounds. It is essentially crunchy water. Watercress, meanwhile, is a biological powerhouse. 100 grams delivers more vitamin K than you need in a day, more vitamin C than an orange, more calcium than milk, more iron than spinach. It is dense with compounds that fight inflammation, support immunity, and protect cells from damage. But the iceberg was convenient. It was stacked. It shipped. It waited. It looked perfect under fluorescent lights for weeks. It never wilted. It never complained. In the 20th century, convenience was king. Supermarkets did not stock their shelves based on what would heal you. They stocked based on what would not spoil. They did not ask what nourished the body. They asked what survived the warehouse. And the cost of that trade is only now becoming clear. By the 1980s, the collapse was total. We traded nutrition for shelf life. We traded the most chemically complex food in nature for a biological shipping container. And the cost? We are paying for it right now. The collapse. By the 1980s, 90% of Britain's watercress growers had quit. The 1,000 acres that fed Victorian England shrank to 150. The economics were brutal. Watercress required constant care. The chalk streams had to be maintained. The beds had to be cleaned. The harvest had to be timed perfectly, cut at dawn, and delivered within hours. Labor costs were high, profit margins were thin, and the supermarkets did not want it. They wanted vegetables that arrived on schedule, that stacked neatly, that sat without complaint. So, watercress farmers, families who had grown the crop for generations, gave up. In one generation, 1,000 years of knowledge vanished. In the United States, watercress never even stood a chance. It was relegated to a garnish, a decorative sprig of green on a fancy plate that you pushed aside. Restaurants used it for color, not nutrition. It was invisible. The Victorian working class survived on watercress. Their children stayed healthy on pennies. But by the late 20th century, the plant that kept an empire fed was nearly extinct from commerce. And the cost was written in our bodies. We were eating more than ever, and we were starving. The starvation paradox. We are eating more calories than ever, and we are starving. When we talk about the modern diet, we talk about sugar, we talk about fat, we talk about processed food and obesity and heart disease. But we rarely talk about density. We are consuming more food than any generation in human history, and we are starving for nutrients. Our plates are filled with crops that have been bred for durability, for size, for sweetness, for shelf life. But in the process, they were stripped of the bitter, complex compounds our bodies evolved to crave, the compounds that protect and heal. Watercress is rich in phenylethyl isothiocyanate. It is the compound that gives the plant its sharp, peppery bite. And in laboratory studies, this molecule has been shown to suppress the development of cancer cells. It is not a supplement. It is not a medication. It is food acting as medicine. Iceberg lettuce has none of this. It is safe. It is bland. It is empty. In Victorian London, a factory worker could feel watercress working in their body within hours. Energy returned. Color came back. Today you can eat a full head of iceberg and feel nothing. No bitterness, no bite, no signal from your body that it has received something powerful. Watercress, even a small handful, announces itself. Your mouth wakes up. Your cells respond. This is the trade we made. We chose the vegetable that asked nothing of us. We rejected the one that demanded we pay attention. And now, decades later, scientists are confirming what the Victorians already knew. The plant we erased was keeping us alive. The farmers who knew. When the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention published that study in 2014, journalists rushed to find the few watercress farmers left in the world. One of them just laughed. His family had been growing watercress in the same Hampshire chalk streams for 4 generations. He had spent his entire life watching the plant feed people, watching it deliver nutrition that no other crop could match. "We've been telling people this for years," he said. "Nobody listens." The Victorian working class did not need a Centers for Disease Control and Prevention study. They did not need mass spectrometers or government researchers. They knew. They knew that when their children looked pale, when winter dragged on too long, when their bodies felt weak, watercress was the answer. A bunch for breakfast delivered more nutrition than any other food they could afford. They felt it in their bodies. Victorian England had railways that moved watercress from stream to city in 4 hours. Modern America has warehouses that hold produce for 2 weeks before it reaches a store. The system changed. Watercress did not. It still required cold water. It still wilted within days. It still refused to wait patiently in trucks and warehouses and fluorescent-lit aisles. The plant that scored 100 out of 100 could not adapt to a world that valued durability over vitality. But the real tragedy was not that the system rejected watercress. The tragedy was that we forgot why we needed it. The lost connection. The tragedy is not that we stopped eating watercress. The tragedy is that we forgot why we ate it. The Victorians did not have mass spectrometers, but they had something we lost. They had a connection to their own bodies. When they felt weak, when their children looked pale, when winter dragged on too long and the cold seeped into their bones, they knew what to do. They bought watercress. They called it poor man's bread, and they felt the effect. Not in a study, not on a nutrition label, in their bodies, their energy returned, their children's color came back, the fog of malnutrition lifted. We lost that feeling. We severed the connection between what we eat and how we feel. We replaced instinct with marketing. We replaced the wisdom of the body with the promises on a package. And watercress, which never learned how to market itself, which never fit neatly into a plastic clamshell container, remained invisible. It had no brand. It had no billion-dollar company pushing it into every supermarket. It only had the truth, and the truth without a marketing budget does not sell. So, the watercress disappeared. Not because it failed, because it refused to play the game. But it is not extinct. It is waiting. And if you know where to look, you can still find it. The survivor. It is not extinct. The streams are still there, and the plant is still growing, quietly waiting. Watercress survives in the wild, wet places of the world, in cold springs and shallow streams, in forgotten corners where the water still runs clean. You can find it at farmers markets if you look carefully. Sometimes in high-end grocery stores, tucked away where most shoppers never venture. It does not look like much. A small bunch, wrapped in a rubber band, leaves already starting to wilt. It costs $4, while the head of iceberg lettuce next to it costs $2. It looks tired, expensive, like a poor choice. But look closer. That humble plant is a survivor. It outlasted the railways. It outlasted the industrial food system's attempt to erase it. It kept growing in streams while the supermarkets filled their shelves with crunchy water. The best food is not the one that looks prettiest. It is not the one that lasts longest in your refrigerator. The best food is the one that fights to stay alive. The system optimized for the wrong variable. It is optimized for the truck, not the human. But you are not a truck. You are a biological organism that requires fuel. And the best fuel on Earth, the plant that scored 100 out of 100, is waiting for you if you are willing to look for it. Next time you walk into a store, walk past the pyramids of iceberg, find the corner, find the watercress. It is alive, and it is waiting to help you feel alive too. If this vault opened your eyes to what we left behind, subscribe to Nature's Lost Vault. We are digging up the history that the modern world tried to bury. Every like, every share, preserves what they tried to erase. The next vault opens soon.